For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Victor Gavrilov. I am the Assistant Dean for Careers in Technology and Tech Ventures at Brown. I am a Brown alum. I graduated in 2015. I studied CS Econ. I co-founded the underground coffee shop that opened again yesterday. I already got myself a raspberry iced tea. It was really good. For the last 9 or so years, I was a software engineering manager. And then since February, I am back at Brown and in my capacity as Assistant Dean for Careers in Tech. And I help folks launch their careers in technology. And today we're talking about some of the most important things to do as you're looking for an internship or job, which is preparing for those coding interviews. And in my opinion, the tool that we're going to look at today, based on my experience as a manager and engineer and interviewer and interviewee hundreds of times, this is one of the best tools that I've come across. Brown students have free access to its premium features, and I think it's the only thing you need. You don't have to go to LeetCode, HackerRank, etc., unless you are really familiar with them, because Exponent has you covered. Today, I'm really glad to be joined by Tom, who is a senior software engineer at Google. He's calling in from Mountain View, California. And Tom is has expertise in distributed systems, data pipelines, machine learning model training and deployment, and has a deep understanding of the technical interview process. He has conducted over 400 real and mock interviews for more than 200 candidates. He has a PhD from the University of Maryland, College Park, and brings a wealth of knowledge from both academia and industry to help others ace technical interviews. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Victor.
Yeah, and can everybody hear Tom? Should I turn it up a little bit? Can you say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me correctly?
Good. I think I see nods and thumbs ups. So I'll stop sharing. Is that okay? I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Tom, and I'm a senior software engineer at Google. And I have also been an Exponent coach for a while. So I think like today, the show is about, like how to leverage Exponent as a platform to ace your engineering interviews. And besides, in addition to introducing the platform to all of you guys, I'm blending some of my personal experience as an interviewer, as a coach, and mention about a few tips about how to ace the technical interviews. All right, so let's have some fun, and let's start the session with some fun problems. So this is a very common coding problem, and let's try to crack it. So the problem is called toSum. So given an array of integers nums and integer target, return the indices of the two numbers so that they add up to the target. All right. So I'll give you a quick example. So let's say the input array is 3, 2, 4, 3, and target is 6. So how many of you can tell me what should be the expected return value? Let's try the Zoom mic. Maybe I can already hear you. If not, Victor probably can help me collect the answers.
So the question is what? Like how many?
Just the return the indices of the two numbers that sum up to 6.
All right. Who's got an idea? I know you all do. Let's see. Looks like 0 and 3.
0 and 3. All right, great. So yeah, so I think like 0 and 3 is a good answer, and some of the other candidates might say 1 and 2 is another answer, right? So the candidate thoughts is, I know what you want, so this is the output I give it to you, and looks like I passed the interview, right? But somehow, I think I've done well, but for some reason they have rejected me, right? So maybe like in interviewer's mind, the interviewer was expecting another output. For example, they are expecting both the combination 0 and 3 and 1 and 2. So instead of returning only one number, so they are really expecting the candidate to return all the values. Let's jump to another case study. So this is a case where it is quite common for my student to say, hey, you know, Tom, I'm not getting too many interviews because I don't know what is going on. So this is my resume. So can anybody tell me, like, you know, what do you think? What is wrong with this resume? All right, take any answer. I'll give 15 seconds for you to read this resume. Any thoughts?
Any PCAs here? Yes, I see a hand up. What's your answer?
There's not a lot of numbers or like any quantification of the
There's
work.
not a lot of numbers and quantification is what I'm hearing.
Very good.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. So yeah, so this resume, the previous resume does not quantify in numbers what is the impact, and also there's less contents about what kind of concrete technologies that this person have used and what's the significance, why is the technology potentially an interest for your future employee, right? So this is a much improved version, right? So it mentioned some specific technology name, for example, Python, MySQL, some pipelines, and in addition, they mentioned what kind of improvement, 30% improvement in model quality and 50% reduction in cost, right? And then it mentioned some of the technologies, for example, they established some unit tests and end-to-end integration tests to make the flow more robust, right? So this is a much more improved version, and it will for sure attract much more attention than the previous one. So these two case studies are just like appetizers for today's show. So we'll go through every single stage of the technical interview process, and I walk you through like how you can leverage the Exponent platform to ace every single stage of them. Right. So this is like a typical tech interview process for software engineers, and we'll talk about other application types such as data scientist, such as product management as well. So it's typically start with an application, and the company might ask you to do some sort of online assessment. And assume we have passed the online assessment, so we will go to the initial screening where you will be connected with a recruiter. They will collect, for example, like your graduation date, what is your potential interest, so that they can know whether there is a potential match between you and a job vacancy. And let's suppose there is a match, there is a potential match. And you go through this technical phone interview process where you'll be connected to one of your like future peers or your hiring manager, where you can talk about like what kind of project you're going to be interested in, or maybe they will assign you a small live task for you to do. And then what follows is also called the on-site interview, where there might be coding interviews, there might be object-oriented design interviews, there might be system design interviews for those of you who are more seeking for more senior position, and it will be accompanied by a behavior interview. Right. So these days, most of the on-site interview are still hosted in a virtual environment. So you're basically talking to a camera. And then hopefully, and then like your interviewers will get together and discuss your performance, and hopefully there is an offer for you. So before we dive into the whole process, like who am I? So I think like Victor has already introduced me quite well. So basically, I'm in the tech field in Google, and I have been conducting a lot of interviews, both training interviews and real interviews. And I have been a coach for about like 3 years or so. Okay, so let's quickly jump into the resume writing. So one question I get a lot from my students is they ask me, like I have very limited industry experiences, but I'm very interested in large language models such as ChatGPT, right? So how can I enhance my resume using the academic project I have ever done, right? So, so this is a sample resume. So the project is about designing a chatbot using some like online libraries for natural language processing, etc. So what is interesting in this resume is the candidate actually touched various topics in this project, starting from data set collection, data pre-processing, tokenization, data cleaning, and how they train the data, how they fine-tune the data, how they experiment with different hyperparameters to optimize some model performance, latency, quality, etc. And in addition, they implemented some context management mechanism to maintain the conversation history to further enable the chatbot to respond to a specific prompt based on some previous context, right? So although this is an academic project, it touches many interesting aspects that an industry job would require. So that's like when you are doing a project or you already have a specific project, you're trying to how to organize a project and put it on your resume. Think about like which one seems to be appealing to a recruiter, which one gives the closest match to the job description, and then try to highlight those in your resume. Your interviewers will understand, like most of the university graduate, new graduate does not really have industry level experience. So even if like this project looks like a toy project, and there's no way this project is like industry level, it is still fine because what matters is you have some relevant experience and you want to demonstrate to others you have the capability to be trained, to adapt to a new environment, to learn new concept in a relatively quick pace. So what makes a good resume, right? So we need to identify the required skills, whether it is technical and also softer skills. So softer skills are also very important in big tech companies because you have to, in a big project, you have to talk to multiple stakeholders. Many of them might have different priorities, different deadlines. So you have to persuade them, like this project is worth of the time. Otherwise, they might push back, right? So you have to demonstrate how your experience matches the job requirement. Use concrete examples and try to be as technical as you can. Don't worry about like your recruiter is not being able to comprehend like the specific technologies you have used in your project. Most of the recruiters are way more technical than we thought. List out your own contributions and impact. For example, if you are leading a team, you can choose the right action verb to say, hey, I lead this certain specific areas. I coordinated with the team. I do some timeline plannings. I de-risk the project. I managed to resolve some conflict, etc. So list your own contributions rather than your team's contribution. So there are tons more like resume resources for you to leverage on Exponent. So try to check out like these resources on Exponent. It ranges from software engineering to engineering manager to product management, data scientist, solution architect, and many more. All right. So before we dive into the next topic, which is the technical interviews, do we have any questions so far?
Are so good. Okay. You might see there's engineering manager resume guide on there, which probably is not something that you are yet looking into. But I think it just speaks to Exponent actually being a resource that follows you along in your career as well. That if you once you get more senior in your roles, there's a lot of content that will still be really relevant. One of the reasons I like it so much. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So let's talk about the technical interviews. So finding a recruiter sets you up for a technical interview. So depending on different kind of positions you're applying to, you might get different sets of questions. This is the first example for software engineers. We'll talk about data scientists. We'll talk about product management roles as well. So typically for a software engineer position, we'll have algorithm and data structure interviews. If you are in the future, when you are more senior, you're looking for mid to senior roles, system design interviews might be involved. But for most of the new graduate student, system design is not a requirement. For junior roles, it is possible that object-oriented design principles will be tested, like a low-level design. For example, they might ask you, how does a CPU scheduler work, right? And if the position related to machine learning skills will be tested. And if this is related to data collections, etc., so maybe databases or SQL will be tested as well. Concurrency is an optional topic, but it's not really required for a new graduate student. And of course, we have behavioral questions for every single candidate, just to test if you can fit into the culture. For data scientist interviews, algorithm and data structures, specifically for Python, is required. And your interview will be interested in collecting your thoughts about like your how do you set up product metrics? How do you do analytics to analyze the current state and the futures for the product? How do you do SQL? If machine learning might be relevant as well. You're going to be tested on probability and statistics. You have behavior sessions as well, and specifically, A/B testing is one important skills you need to master as a data scientist. For product management, coding is typically not required, but it might be beneficial if you can basically understand some basics of the coding. And more importantly, like a product science, how do you design a specific product? How do you design a product strategy? A sample question can be, like should Amazon enter the food delivery business, right? So you have to try to reason, try to use some data, try to assume some hypothesis, and then try to propose a methodology to verify the hypothesis. Technical communication is important. For example, your interviewer might ask you, what happens when you type a URL into a browser, right? If you type in www.google.com, what happens? And eventually you see the Google's like a searching the searching result. But what happens if you just type a URL in there, right? So execution and analytical thinking is very important. They might ask you a sample question such as, if we are running Facebook and the Facebook friend request are down by 20% in the last month, what do you do? Right? What kind of action can you do to bring up the friend request volume? The behavior question, simple question can be, tell me a time when you had your leadership to buy in your vision. You have to persuade somebody to buy in your idea. The go-to-market strategy. For example, how would you launch a new product in a highly competitive market? Customer empathy, user research. For example, what kind of method do you use to understand a user behavior? Right. So if users are trying to buy something, they might, wander around in a few pages before they add something into a cart, but they might not eventually pay for the product. So what is a user journey? What is a user intention? What is a user behavior? Cross-functional collaboration is very, very important. How do you provide, for example, how do you prioritize conflicting feedback from different teams? Right. All right. So we go back to the coding question a little bit before I give you more concrete examples. So from the interviewer perspective, a good coding question should reflect the ability of the candidate to understand the problem, whether they can basically show some basic coding skills, whether they have the basic knowledge about the algorithm data structure, whether they can perform logical thinking process, and whether they can optimize their code based on, for example, a brute force approach, whether they can analyze corner cases, whether they can analyze the algorithm complexity and use the analysis result to drive optimization. If anything went wrong, can they debug independently? Or they need a huge amount of hints. Right. So we'll talk about how coding style would help in a coding interview specifically. So basically, the chart shows if you can write very clean code. The time taken to produce the code might be high initially, but the cost for you to make changes will be significantly lower as your code becomes larger and larger. Specifically for coding interview purposes, like if you're gonna implement some additional feature, or if you want to debug, if you want to enhance your current code, writing and maintaining a clean code will be your best friend. So to give you a concrete example, let's try to go through this quick question. So the question is, given a string containing digit from 2 to 9 inclusive, return all possible letter combinations that number will represent. Return the answer in any order. For example, if the input string is simply 2-digit, 2 and 3, and from the telephone panel, we can see 2 actually maps to the letter of A, B, and C, and 3 maps to the letter D and F. So we have 3 by 3, which is 9 combinations, starting with A and D and ending with C and F. Right. So one candidate implement this version. I'm not going to ask you to try to really understand this version of code due to short amount of time, but let's try to focus on the code that I made it bold. I don't know if the code is too small for you to visualize, but basically there is a while loop, or outer while loop, and then there are 2 nested for loop underneath. And then there are some manipulations for this new array, and eventually there are some appending operations for the new array, and eventually we return this variable called array, right? So the idea here is I bet I bet you, if it's the first time you look at this specific code, there's no way for any of you, including myself, to understand what the hell is going on here, right? So the code is way more complicated for anybody to make sense of during a short amount of time. And a common pitfall here is the candidate try to explain this code, try to debug this code, and this might end up with a lot of time wasted, and they might or might not even, produce a correct version of the code in time, right? So instead, I would say, let's look at a much improved coding style, right? So the function is written in Python, and the function is called backtrack, right? And it only has one single for loop, and the for loop basically has 3 lines. We append a letter to a current variable, and we call another function which happen to have the same name of backtrack, and we populate it with some input parameters before we call it like current.pop. So can anyone in the audience loudly tell me, like, do you recognize this coding pattern? By calling the same function name.
Recursion. Recursion, yeah.
Exactly. So this is a well-known pattern called recursion. Like specifically, this is a very special format of recursion called a backtracking. So if you're not familiar with backtracking recursion, that is fine. The idea here is if all of us can use a well-known technology, well-known terminology, it gives a very good communication channel between you and your interview. So basically, everybody can understand what you are doing very quickly. Okay. All right. So there are a lot of guidance from Google or from other big companies about how you can you can write clean code, write a code in style. For example, there are specific rules for you to name a variable, for you to name a class, to name a method. For Python, you can use comprehension to greatly simplify your code, etc. Right? So just Google search a Google style guideline. There's a bunch of guidelines for Python, for C++, for SQL, for Java, etc. All right, so we'll talk about a common pitfall, which is some candidates try to over optimize the solution. So the interviewer asked a simple question about implement in-order traversal, binary tree in-order traversal, right? So let's say if we are given this tree structure, so naturally if we are going to do an in-order traversal, so we go to the left subtree first before we traverse the root of the tree, and then we go to the right subtree, right? So the traversal order of this particular tree should be node 4, 2, 5, 1, 3, right? So this is basically some rudimentary a data structure and algorithm class. One can easily implement a recursive version, or if you want, you can implement an iterative one as well. However, we bump into some smart candidate who is not quite satisfied with the current time and space complexity, right? So by the way, if you implement either using the recursion or iterative version, both the time and space complexity will be O(n), where n represents the number of nodes, right? But sometimes the candidate might say, hey, I know an improved version which can improve the space complexity to O(1), which is called Morris traversal. So I'm going to propose and implement it, right? However, the Morris traversal, you might or might not heard of it. It's a technique that requires to mutate the input binary tree. So it changes the structure of the binary tree, which might or might not be beneficial to this specific problem, right? So my recommendation here is, once you propose the basic version, whether you use recursion or iterative approach, try to check in with the interviewer. Hey, that this one already seems to be a sufficient answer. If yes, then you don't have to worry about optimizing it even more, right? Another interesting discussion here is, some candidates might say, hey, I've seen this problem before. It's just my day. I've just seen this problem on LeetCode, had a rank on Exponent, etc. Then my interviewer asks me the same question. Should I be very frank and tell my interviewer, I've seen this problem before, so do you want to switch to a new problem? My suggestion is you don't have to tell your interviewer unless another interviewer from the same company just asks you the same question. The reason is at the end of the day, they'll sit together and discuss your performance, right? But it might be interesting for them to figure out, they have basically the duplicate answer, a duplicated question and answer. And what happens after that is they might arrange you an additional round of interview, which might be a waste of time for you, right? However, that being said, usually you don't want to trust your memory, right? Because there might be variations in how the constraint of the problem is constructed. They might change the corner cases. They might change the input and output formats, or simply the problem just looks familiar to you, but they are inherently very different problems. So my suggestion here is for every candidate, I encourage them to think about a problem as if the problem is new to them, right? Do not try to seek into your memory and try to dig an older solution out of your memory. Try to solve the problem as if it is brand new to you. All right. So more coding interview tips. Propose examples, right? Examples help you to eliminate any vagueness in your understanding, to bring you and your interviewer on the same page, to help you understand the formality of the input and output, right? Try to perform complex analysis in a proactive way. This shows you're fluent in complex analysis, and you can use complex analysis to drive your optimization. For example, if you sense the time complexity is too high, you can use it as an argument to try to allocate more time in optimizing the time complexity, right? Try to maintain a healthy workflow by splitting the brainstorming portion away from the actual coding implementation. I see a lot of candidates try to mix both. They do a little bit thinking, and then they implement something, and then they say, hey, Tom, I feel like I want to implement another version. So they completely discard the previous version and start something new. So this back and forth process can waste a lot of time. So it's best for you to just separate them altogether. And listen and be ready to take hints, right? So you can assume your interviewer are warm-hearted. They are very helpful. They want you to be successful during your interview, right? So for most of times, the only time that your interview jump in and provide you hints is not because they do not like you. They want to provide you hints so that there is a larger chance for you to be more successful during the interview, right? So just listen, and then try to take hints. Do not dodge the question. Answer their question. The question is usually a method for them to deliver the hints to you. Answer their question. If there's any misunderstandings, if you do not understand the hints, do not understand the questions, ask them to clarify their question, right? Keep calm. We have multiple rounds. Even if you blow win of the round, it's not the end of the day, right? So like you can always ask for a different problem in the worst case. If you have just like a zero idea about how to solve the current question, right? And lastly, keep in mind that interviewers have different personal styles. Some might be more helpful, some tend to give you more hints than average. Some might be just like act as if like they are, like they are very cold, very calm. Maybe they are just like behave like a bar racer for the company. So different interviewers have different styles. So you cannot judge from their facial expression, whether you are making a good progress or not. All right. So I will skip most of the system design interview framework because this is not directly applicable to you. But keep in mind that Exponent have a lot of great contents about system design interview, so it might come handy in the future for you. So this is basically a walkthrough of the system design interview framework. We start with how do you define the problem, how do you deliver a high-level design, how do you dive deep into a subsystem, and how do you identify bottleneck, and how do you scale up the system, and then you can review and summarize your design. So a case study here would be something like like a design Instagram. So basically the feature can be used, so can upload images, can follow others, can view a newsfeed, etc. Right. So this is a high-level design. Basically, user can start with a mobile client, and the request go to a load balancer, go to the application server, either a read or write one, and then there are some database to store the metadata or the actual content of the image. And how do you further scale up the system? You can add cache, you can add message queues, you can add a specific newsfeed generation service, etc. So Exponent, as I said, Exponent has a lot of more materials and about how do you ace a system design interview. So this might be a more relevant topic. This applies to data scientists or like a product management roles. So the question is about like how do you help Facebook to decide whether or not to add a feature to show videos that are users friendly. So so here are some common answers from the candidates. So the candidate might say we can do perform some A/B test, right? So for example, we can separate the group of users into two groups, one control and one test. The control group can have the feature disabled, and the test group can enable the feature. And then we can compare the time spent on the platform, right? And some other candidate can say, we can perform some analytics. For example, we can calculate how people engage with their friends' activities, or we can calculate the percentage of user-like videos among all shared videos. If the percentage is low, so maybe there's no point for us to even turn on this feature. Right? We can perform some surveys. For example, we can gather some quantitative ideas, quantitative data on whether user would find this feature useful or rather annoying. Right? However, we should keep in mind that we should always try to define the product metric first. Right? So at the end of the day, those social media companies, all they care about is try to increase the user engagement. But how do we actually define the user engagement? We can define the user engagement by calculating the time spent on the platform, or quantify the number of clicks, the click-through rate, or the interaction between friends, or how long the user retention is, right? So would the feature help increase the user engagement? We have to think. Maybe yes, because the user might spend more time watching the video compared to a text-based newsfeed. It might be more interesting, right? It might be more relevant. Maybe the answer is no, because the video recommendation might become repetitive and user might simply become bored. Or the videos are just like a passive contents. So user just look at a video and leave. So they at the end of the day, they might actually reduce user interaction in the long term if the feature has no way to interact with the friend, right? So if you have these two hypotheses on both sides, yes and no, so you can try to test your hypothesis in a much comprehensive way. All right. So like generally speaking, like there are a lot more details you can find if you are seeking for data scientist role. There are courses for data scientists, there are courses for SQL interviews, there's courses for machine learning engineers. If you are seeking for product management roles, there are courses for PM, for technical product managers, and there are specific courses for different skills that are required for becoming a product manager. I think like we all like quickly go through the OO design because it is a less common format compared to coding and a product design. So the question here is, can you design an elevator system for a building using object-oriented design principles? So a couple of like so there's a lot of definitely a lot of contents inside this domain, but one thing I want to highlight is we need to ask a lot of clarification questions. For example, you want to clarify whether how much you want to clarify how much capacity does the elevator have, and what's the current weight of the elevator that define the current state of the elevator. Whether the elevator is for passengers or it is really for goods transportation. Do we have multiple elevators in one story, right? So there's a lot of questions, good questions you can ask. So asking those clarification questions help you to understand what kind of system are you talking about. So it helps you to narrow down the scope so that you can have a more focused design. So the behavior interview is more relevant because it is universal. Whether you are applying for for software engineers, data scientists, product management, you will all bump into the behavior interview, right? So one sample questions I have here is tell me about a time you disagree with the team, right? The team here has a very vague definition, right? In an academic setting, it can be a group of a student who is trying to do a group project, right? So, from the interviewer perspective, what are the interviewers looking for? So, for example, they might be looking for whether you had the backbone, you have integrity to say no to others. Are you thinking for the best interest for the company? Or in an academic setting, are you thinking for the best interest for the group? Whether you have the analytical thinking process and whether you can give constructive feedback, right? If you want to, try to reason, that this is a good strategy versus others, whether you can persuade others using quantitative data, whether you can say, hey, this is ABC we should do, rather than just offering some hand-wavy suggestions, right? Whether the third items is whether or not you can embrace diverse culture and mindset. So do not blame your teammate, right? If anything went wrong, if you miss a deadline, try to analyze what went wrong and how we can improve in the future, right? Self-reflection. Even if the project is delivered, right? Can we think about, is there anything else we can do to make the process even more smooth. If there is anything bad happens, what should I do next? So that the bad thing doesn't happen again, right? When you try to answer to these questions, try to follow a STAR model. The STAR model refers to situation, task, action, and result, right? Describe the situation, describe what specific task you're up to, describe what kind of actions you have done in that specific scenario, and what kind of result, what kind of impact have you delivered. Keep in mind that interview is a two-way street, right? So your interviewer is trying to collect, like many different metrics so that they can determine whether the candidate can get the job done, right? Are you going to crash everything, right? If you are writing a lot of bugs in your code, you might, the first day of your job, you might crash something, right? Can you analyze the corner cases correctly? How robust is your testing methodology? How much effort do they have to spend to review your code, right? If you have a really good a coding style, everybody will like you. Right? Are you an easygoing person to work with? Are you ready to take hints, or you're just ignoring the interview hints and be very confident to say, I can simply ignore all the hints and I can deliver you a perfect answer? Can you explain things well, right? For a complicated problem, it might require you to give a concrete example to deliver your thoughts to an interview. But on the other hand, as a candidate, you also would like to consider, does my interviewer know the problem at all, right? Is this an interesting problem at all? If things went wrong, do I have enough support? So different companies have different styles. Some companies appreciate a more independent style of working. This is especially true if the company is a startup, or a more mature company might appreciate a more collaborative way of getting things done. How restrict are the coding review process? If yes, maybe they care a lot about the robustness of the code implementation. Otherwise, they might just want to, deliver something very quickly so that they can, deliver the project to the market as quickly as possible. Do they appreciate my code, right? Is the position a good fit for me? If I perform really well in my coding interview, in my interviews, I might have more bargains when I eventually negotiate my offer. Right? Be mindful about time. Focus on medium level problem, common problems, and practice taking hints for part problems. Do mock interviews and break interviews into multiple days if this is possible. Interview can be a very exhausting journey for you. So if it is possible, try to break interview into multiple days. All right, so to introduce you some materials that is available on Exponent, there are different kind of courses. I believe there is 60 plus courses that is available on Exponent that ranges from many different positions at different levels of your career. We have many practice problems, right? In Python, in JavaScript, in C++, SQL, and many more. You can basically try to code and compile and debug your code within the Exponent platform. You can there are video solutions and mock interviews you can perform using the platform. There are a large group of communities that will consistently try to refresh the question bank and then add answers and discussions, etc. Right. So there's 2,000 plus real interview questions and answers in the database. So you can basically search and browse by roles, companies, and category. Right? You can even sort it by trend, etc. most common problems. And one thing I like Exponent a lot is it offers the practice mock interview experience. This is completely free. So basically, like thousands of people across the world is try to give mock interviews to each other. So Exponent provide candidates with questions and solutions and canonical like grading rubrics, so that like everybody can become a candidate as well as an interviewer. So being an interview give you a new way of looking at interviews, and if believe me, it give you a tons of insights about how do you like this candidate, and if I were them, how could I improve my performance even further, right? And like you can basically create your free Exponent account by visiting like this tryexponent.com login, and or there is a link for Brown. You can just try exponent.com/Brown, then it will ask you to register with. I think like the process is already established, so you basically register account. It's all free, and you can start leveraging all the wonderful resources available in Exponent. So lastly, I'm going to share this link to you because this is my homework. So I would kindly request of you to, go to this link. So basically provide me the feedback so that we can make the workshop for the universities even better in the future. Yes. And here we have my linking and email address.
Yeah, I will share the slide deck as well with everybody here. And yeah, thank you so much. We're definitely going to have a couple of minutes for questions. I'll also be here until about 15 to 20 minutes past 5. One thing I wanted to say before we head into Q&A, there's a session tomorrow at the same time, also with free food, where we're actually going to zoom out a little bit on like where in your job search process the technical interview really fits in. And then we're going to zoom in a little bit more and go into some of these Exponent things live together, so I can show you the features hands-on a little bit more. I'll also share a bunch of personal insights and stories in tomorrow's talk. So this is going to build on what we saw today. And I'm also really looking to get your feedback as well on what topics you want to have me talk about tomorrow, which things you want to learn more about, which things were a little bit confusing today, so that I can prepare and get you like a deeper understanding of these topics. So email me those things. And yeah, why don't we do a couple of minutes for Q&A? Anybody have anything? Yes.
Question I have is that if you're a senior and you're really struggling to decide what area you want to
So the question is, for a senior who's struggling to maybe find which area in the tech industry to focus on, what do you do? How do you find your way?
I see. So yeah, this is a really really good question. So I will try to answer because like the answer depends on of course depend on different person. So my own experience is I like firstly I talk to alumni, university alumni, some of my friends who has already have the like industry job experience. And try to like collect their feedback about like what their daily job look like, what do they do, what are the things they like or dislike about their job, and then try to think whether like you are a good fit there. A quick example here is, for example, if you are going to become like a project manager, requires you to like attend a lot of meetings, requires to have that capability to say no to others, because like if you are not if you're just like me, I'm not really good at saying no to others, like then like being a product manager might not be a good fit for me, because that actually required for you to like prioritize things so that the goals fit the company goals in general. And also I think like there are companies that offers like rotation programs. So that like basically the idea is like you went into one company and then you try one position for a month or two before you like automatically rotate to another position. There's no like commitment at the point, but like after half a year or 1 year, so you kind of get the idea what you like or dislike. So then you can kind of like make a more informed decision. So I think like this. The question is more like, you kind of like figure it out along the way. There's no like it's not like a short-term mission for you. It's for most people, this is a lifelong task for anybody to find what they truly like.
I'll also share this. So we heard about talking to alumni, heard about like just maybe joining a rotational program. Also, if you want to just get like a basic reading into all of the popular tech roles that exist to get yourself a feeling of like, oh, this is more or less interesting to me, I created a resource of about 21 or so most popular tech roles that you can find in the Career Exploration Resource Library. I'll share with you the links as well. And it's a really short overview over each one of them, but then also if you click on one of them to learn more, there's a deeper article about what they do. Including a couple of news sources and blogs, and including how to find LinkedIn alums, Brown alums on LinkedIn directly. So for mobile app engineers, I created a link that is pre-filtered to mobile app engineers that you can find alumni to speak with. So I would utilize that in order to find these folks. I really also want to double down on the insight that it's a lifelong journey. And you don't have to have it figured out right now. And your interests will, in fact, pretty certainly change over time. So it's okay to start with something that feels good. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you'll learn on the job quite a bit in what you wanna do in the future. And you can always come talk to me.
Thank you.
Thank you. What else? Okay, Tom, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you having you here. And yeah, I'll stop the recording at this point and I'll hang out a little bit as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.